Do 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 do. Spent an enormous amount of thought and energy to figuring out cosmic mechanics because it doesn't make you any money. Sure as hell doesn't make me any money. And but I consider it to be incredibly important because there's a huge difference between intellect and wisdom. And the best tool on earth is the human mind that is finely attuned with the methodology, of course, the tools within the mind. One of definitely the most important, excuse me, is retroduction, but approaching things logically and intelligently. It's an undeniable truism that the distinction between intelligence and wisdom is clearly manifest, and I'm probably going to butcher Nikola Tesla's statement here when he talks about scientists who can think deeply, but they can't think clearly. To think clearly, you actually have to have wisdom. There are a lot of really deep thinkers. I mean, like I've said before countless times, insane asylums are full of deep thinkers. But they can't think clearly. They're quite insane. I mean, they can do long-form algebra on an imaginary chalkboard and actually come up with the right answers, but they cannot think clearly at all. It's the case that with the absence of wisdom and the absence of the tools such as the most important tool, Platonic/Pythagorean retroduction, that these people actually can't come to clear conclusions about cosmic mechanics or natura naturans, or what specifically is Mother Nature. A field is just an ether perturbation modality, and I wanted to make an important video on this fact. People actually, the unintelligent folks such as Einstein and Richard Feynman and Niels Bohr and countless others who are lost in the cult of quantum, and that's what quantum is. Quantum, by the way, is based upon, not my words, theirs, their understanding of the nature of light, but they don't even know what light is. And they've reified space as having properties, and space has absolutely no properties, and that's quote-unquote from Nikola Tesla. The only time that Nikola Tesla popped his cork, if you will, or became angry, if you want to use the word anger accurately, as it's ever applied to the meek, gentle soul of Nikola Tesla, was him railing against Einstein and his ilk, who reified space as having properties. And space has absolutely no properties. Space is exactly like a shadow. We think a shadow is a thing, but of course a shadow is an absence of light. But if you stand in a shadow, it seemingly has properties. The answer to the ultimate question, I'm getting to it here immediately, is the space itself is ether rarefaction. It itself, of course, as I've just said, has no properties. Rather, the ether is the property that the scientists are confusing with the property of space. To say, and I've said this countless times in other videos too, magnetism, of course, is the universe's only force vector, and it is a three-dimensional S-curve. Magnetism, to say magnetism, and to say create space, and the manifestation of time, because time is only the measure of magnitudes, and magnitudes is only the manifestation of a centrifugal force vector, which of course is the expanding, in the initial stages, the expanding toroidal geometry of magnetism itself. I mean, that is the geometry of magnetism. The inverse or negative image, of course, of the toroid is the hyperboloid, the geometry of the dielectric. Increasing inertia and acceleration. Force and motion, i.e. magnetism, the universe's only a force vector, creates space. And when you have space, you have magnitudes. When you have magnitudes, you have time. Time doesn't exist itself. It exists conventionally, but it doesn't exist ultimately. Time is only a measure. That's not my position. It's the position of the wisest Pythagorean and Platonic masters who've ever existed. So what we actually have here is to say space and to say creation of time, to say magnetism. One and the same thing. But let's actually talk about that and actually apply retroductive logic to the nature of space. And I don't know if you've ever seen an ice skater skate. They draw on their arms, and the centrifugal effect is that they actually increase their spin. I don't know if you've ever seen an ice skater. They start spinning, their arms are out, and as they draw their arms in like this, they increase acceleration. And using that mental analogy, I don't know if you can see it, just type in a skater spinning or the ice skater spin. It's slower further away as the mass is further away, and this is due to ether torsion. decelerating a faraway mass vectors the mass to the lowest pressure mediation. As comets are in the outer reaches of our solar system, of course, they're slow, and of course they speed down. They follow a parabolic, and of course, a parabolic path to the sun. Of course, they start to speed up. Scientists, as we call them scientists, are not real scientists, they're mathematicians. To demonstrate the supposed curvature of space, what they'll do is they'll use a trampoline or some other stretchy fabric, and they'll put like a bowling ball in the middle. And of course, the bowling ball will actually pull down on the fabric, and it will create this depression. Say, here you go, this is the curvature of space-time. This is space-time. It's curved. And of course, when you roll a ball on this trampoline, of course, it follows that depression. But this is incorrect. It's the reification of properties attributable to space, of which space has no properties at all. What it is ether rarefaction. When space is manifest, ether rarefaction is present. When space is manifest, time is present, because time is a measure of magnitude. The other property of a divergent centrifugal force vector, i.e. magnetism, is the manifestation of ether torsion. The closer masses are, the more they spin. Just like a coin in a vortex well. I don't know if you've ever seen those vortex wells. They're very, very cute. They're basically funnels, and you spin a coin, and of course it slowly travels around the lip of the vortex, and it starts to accelerate. And of course, the void there in the center. By the way, it's the same void you actually see on either quote-unquote pole of a magnet underneath the ferrocell. That is, of course, the vortex point of increasing inertia and acceleration. Here we actually have both polarized time, and this is the reason why seed disparity is so different between North Pole seeds and South Pole seeds, but that, of course, is a matter for another topic. But space is itself ether rarefaction, and ether rarefaction breeds torsion. I don't know if, well, let's take a rubber band. When you actually pull a rubber band taut from either end, you actually have this torsion. That torsion causes the mutual mass acceleration of two masses, but they're not accelerating towards one another. They're accelerating towards the lowest pressure mediation between the two, as I've actually shown underneath the supercell. There's actually this void created that both masses are accelerating towards, or in this case, the magnets are accelerating towards. There's no such thing as magnetic attraction. Magnetic attraction, of course, is dielectric acceleration. Mutual mass acceleration between two large bodies occurs identically so. It is just point non-specific or incoherent mutual mass acceleration. Point source mass acceleration is the same distinction between a light bulb and a laser. We actually have 5 watts of illumination. This isn't 5 watts, of course. We have incoherent non-point source light, and of course it's not an emission, but let's call it what it is, a coaxial ether perturbation, and this is no different between two masses that are accelerating not towards one another but towards a null pressure point, but that is just ether rarefaction. Everything in the universe is field pressure mediation, FPM, field pressure mediation. Mother Nature, I say humorously, is a hairy armpit chick wearing a hemp skirt and dirty feet. It's not complicated. She doesn't carry around a bag of magic particles. She doesn't carry around a calculator. Everything is very, very simple. Everything is force and motion, inertia and acceleration, centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence, respectively the conjugate geometry of the entire damn universe, that being magnetism and dielectricity, respectively the geometry of the toroid and the geometry of the hyperboloid, or the hourglass shape. The negative image of one another, of course, is the opposite. The negative image of the torus is the hyperboloid. Negative image of the hyperboloid is, of course, the torus. These form the yin and the yang, or the conjugate geometry of the entire universe, from macro to micro, from one end of the universe to the other. This is the immutable law of the entire universe. Undeniably so. But space has no properties. This notion of bending space or bending space-time that you and I grew up in watching these goofy science fiction movies and TV shows is absolutely hogwash, and it actually came from the far, far less than wise mind of Bohr, Einstein, Feynman, And who's the other guy that's the priest in the cult of quantum? His name is Leonard Susskind. Leonard Susskind, excuse me. I have all these names in my head. It took me a second there to remember it. But space itself has no properties. Rather, the ether is the property that the scientists are superimposing upon space. This vortex that objects accelerate towards, not fall into, is a well of decreasing ether torsion. If there's only two masses in the universe, as they get closer, they start to accelerate. This is no different than the light and the field lines actually seen on either pole of a magnet underneath the supercell. That large black spot right in the center, that is the ether torsion portal, if you will, or vortex. It's the vortex of increasing inertia and acceleration, the erasure of the ether torsion, of the after effect of a divergent magnetic field that human beings conceptualize as space. This is space, it is something, it does things. No, it doesn't. It doesn't do anything. This conceptual reification, of course, is a fallacy, and it's due to a lack of wisdom. It's the same reason human beings conceptualize a shadow. Well, you stand in a shadow, you feel colder. A shadow is something. No, a shadow is the opposite of something. A shadow is absence. We can't engage in conceptual reification. It's like talking about waves. Waves of what? There's no such thing as a wave. Waves absolutely don't exist because they're not things. Space doesn't exist because it is not a thing. It's a conceptual reification. If we want to reify space in an accurate fashion, even though we can't, we're talking about ether torsion present due to the divergent three-dimensional force vector of a magnetic field. It's as simple as that. That actually is simple. This video was incredibly simple. I mean, this is dumbing it down quite a lot. I don't know why people tell me to dumb it down. It's like, well, I already did dumb it down, the video. It's kind of strange when every time I hear that. But just think of the ice skater as she draws her arms in and she starts to accelerate. Think about mutual mass acceleration. What are they actually falling or accelerating towards? There is electrostatic torsion between any two masses, period. That electrostatic torsion, of course, is the ether rarefaction, which is ether torsion, that naturally draws two masses not towards one another, but towards a null pressure point in the ether to remove that torsion. In other words, if there's only two masses in the entire universe, let's say they're these two masses, it's just like a stretched rubber band between these two. They will naturally accelerate towards the null pressure point. This is the vortex of erasure of three-dimensional force vectors, i.e. magnetism, the after effect of a divergent magnetic field. Since the only force vector in the entire universe is magnetism, what do you think resultantly is the manifestation after a divergent force vector, i.e. magnetism? It is the creation of space, which is not a thing and has no properties. It's a concept. Space, the final frontier. Space, what? You can't bend space, you can't warp space. The supposed curvature of space is non-existent. It is a misappropriation of ether torsion that is reified conceptually and incorrectly from the ether, which modern scientists don't believe in because they're not intelligent. Really, they're not wise. They're very intelligent, many of them, but they're not wise. Taken from the ether itself. It is ether torsion. Explaining and understanding the nature of the universe is really quite simple, but these people have convoluted and contradicted and reified concepts that have no basis in reality. I mean, there's the notion of light. Their fundamental understanding of the universe, by their own definition, is supposedly their understanding of light. But light's not an emission. It doesn't travel. It's a rate of induction. Rate of induction is not a speed. It's a rate of induction of a transverse coaxial circuit against itself. In other words, what is the rate of induction as that applied to a speed? Well, it takes X amount of time to manifest from here to here. That's a speed. Something's traveling. It's not a wave. It's not a particle. It's not an emission. It doesn't have a speed. It's not a photon. And it's not a wave-particle duality either. There are no dualities in nature. Duality implies explicitly, denotatively, an inherent contradiction. Mother Nature has no dualities. There are no dualities in nature. If these people, their most fundamental foundation bedrock, is that light is the basis of quantum. And our understanding of light is that it's a wave-particle duality. Sometimes it acts like a wave, and sometimes it acts like a particle, sometimes both. You know, neither one is correct, but together they are. That's their words, not mine. It's a duality. It's a wave-particle duality. If advanced aliens land, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, we understand what these ignorant human beings know by their understanding of light, and they have no idea what light is. And human beings don't. Walter Russell and a few other people did. I do. But humanity does not. Humanity can't even begin to understand how simplex the universe is until they actually understand what light is. And humans don't. You all think it's a wave and a particle and a photon and a wave-particle duality, and it has a speed, and it's emitted from point A to point, like when you flick on a switch and turn the light on. Like, it's emitting something. No, it's not emitting anything. It's like ignorantly saying a person in the middle of a pond flapping their arms is emitting something. They're not emitting anything. They're creating perturbations in the water, i.e. the field, the ether. Now, depending on what that perturbation is, you can say it's light, you can say it's magnetism, you can say it's dielectricity, or electricity, which is a hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. Do you think a person in the middle of a pond flapping their arms is emitting something? No, they're not emitting anything. Anyway, I hope you like this video. I try to keep it really simple. If you do like it, let me know. Click the link below. Or don't. Let me know how much you hated the video. Thanks and goodbye.